Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, you're told you'll be re-educated. What that word means is hunger pressed into your stomach, exhaustion sinking into your bones, and silence pressed against your throat. Promises of correction mask something else entirely, the slow unmaking of self, the stripping away of voice, of dignity, of memory. Before we begin this journey into that silence, do me one small favour. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you want the ultimate immersive experience, consider using a pair of wireless earbuds. They're comfortable, discreet, and designed so you can wear them even while sleeping. I've linked my favourite pair plus other sleep tools in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. Content warning. This story contains descriptions of violence, starvation, illness, and death that occurred under the Khmer Rouge. Viewer discretion advised. It happens quickly, without warning. You hear the sound of footsteps before you see them, the measured tread of boots approaching your doorway, and then voices shouting names, yours among them. The guards enter without hesitation, their faces set, their eyes scanning every corner of your home, as if you had already been judged guilty. There is no explanation, no evidence presented, only the blunt accusation of disloyalty. Words like traitor and enemy cut through the air with a finality that makes protest useless. You feel the weight of them more heavily than any shackles, because they carry a sentence you cannot undo. Around you, neighbours are pulled from their homes as well, bundled together in confusion and fear, each clutching whatever they managed to hold on to before the guards arrived. The air feels different now, thick and pressing, as though the walls themselves understand what is happening. Children cry and are silenced with hurried hands. Elders stumble as they are pushed forward, and no one dares to resist. Resistance would mean something worse. You glance at familiar faces, people you have greeted at markets, worked beside in fields, shared meals and laughter with, but they are changed in this moment, transformed by the terror of accusation into fellow prisoners. The guards bark orders to stand in a line, to lower your eyes, to remain silent. One gesture too slow, one question spoken aloud, and the wooden sticks they carry will crash down across your back. The word re-education is spoken, a promise dressed in official tones, and yet it echoes like a threat. You are told this is not a punishment, only a correction, a chance to prove your loyalty by learning again what loyalty means. But no one believes the words. They sound rehearsed, empty, a ritual repeated to keep the machinery moving. You know it because the guards themselves seem impatient with the explanation, as though the language of reform is only a mask they are required to wear. Behind it is something sharper, colder, a truth none of you can yet see, but all of you can feel pressing against the back of your necks. You're allowed only moments to gather what you carry, and even then most of it is stripped away before you can take a step outside. A pouch of rice, a blanket, a photograph. Hand seize them, tossing them into a pile that grows higher with each household. Objects that once held meaning are reduced to scraps, stripped of value by the decision of strangers. You hold nothing now but the uncertainty that lies ahead. The absence of your belongings feels almost louder than the shouts of the guards, an emptiness that rattles inside you, as if your life has already begun to erode. The air outside is harsh, the sun glaring down without sympathy. A crowd has formed, men and women pulled from their homes, children clutching at their parents, elders leaning heavily on canes or shoulders. Dust rises where boots strike the ground, turning the scene into a haze of motion and command. The guards walk among you, pointing, counting, pushing bodies into lines that shift and buckle under the weight of fear. You notice how quickly the silence spreads, how voices falter and fall away. People who might once have argued or pleaded now say nothing, as though sound itself has become dangerous. A woman beside you holds her baby tightly, rocking it against her chest, and for a moment you think the child's cries will break the spell of quiet. But the guard nearest her glances once, sharp and cold, and she presses her hand over the child's mouth until only muffled whimpers remain. Every gesture carries risk. Even the sound of breathing seems measured, rationed, as though too much life shown openly might invite punishment. You feel your own chest tighten with the effort to remain still, to remain invisible. The accusations are repeated not for you to answer, but for you to absorb. Words like reactionary, corrupt, and dangerous drift over the assembled crowd, sticking to every body, whether they fit or not. The labels matter less than the act of labelling. Once spoken, they attach themselves to you in ways you cannot peel away. You see the confusion in faces around you, the disbelief that ordinary lives, farmers, shopkeepers, neighbours, could suddenly be recast as enemies of the state. But disbelief carries no weight here. The guards carry weapons, and weapons decide who is right. Time seems to stretch unnaturally, every heartbeat drawn out as you wait for what will come next. You wonder if perhaps this is all, if perhaps the threat is only to frighten you into obedience, that soon you might be sent back to your home. But the guards show no sign of relenting. Their eyes move over you with indifference, as though you are already separated from the life you knew. You realize with a sinking clarity that you will not be returning. You think briefly of Phnom Penh, emptied in a single tide when the soldiers ordered everyone to leave. Cities, towns, villages, all swept into the countryside in the name of year zero. That same current has reached you now. Around you, whispers flicker at the edges of the crowd, quickly smothered by fear. Some have heard rumours, fragments of stories about what re-education means. Long days of labour, endless hours of slogans, confessions wrung from exhausted throats. None of it confirmed, none of it denied. Only uncertainty, stretched thin like wire across every mind. The guards keep their expressions flat, but their hands rest casually on their weapons, reminding everyone that questions are not permitted. The crowd is ordered forward, a shuffling step at first, then a steady push as bodies surge into motion. You stumble to keep your place in line, pressed on all sides by neighbours who are now fellow prisoners. The path ahead is the road, its dust already rising in the heat, stretching away toward an unseen destination. Behind you, the houses look smaller, familiar outlines shrinking with every step. You feel a tearing inside, a sudden sharp grief for what you are leaving, though you do not dare look back for long. To linger would draw the attention of the guards, and the attention of the guards is something no one survives unmarked. You hear the word again, spoken as if it were a promise, re-education. It clings to the air like smoke, heavy and choking. You understand it now for what it is, not a lesson, but a sentence, not renewal, but erasure. The guards repeat it as if repetition can make it real, but its meaning is already written in the way they push you forward. In the silence they force upon you, in the belongings they have stripped away. You step onto the road, herded with the others, and the dust rises to swallow your feet. The road stretches ahead in a line that seems endless, a ribbon of dust baking under the punishing sun. The heat presses down until your skin burns and your thoughts grow sluggish. Dust clings to your throat and nostrils. The sound of boots, the thud of stumbling feet, the sharp cracks of orders shouted. These fill the air, blending into a rhythm that feels like a drumbeat pushing you onward. The march is not a steady walk, but a series of collapses and recoveries. Someone trips and falls ahead of you, their body striking the ground with a dull thud, and for a moment the line stutters. A guard's voice cuts through, commanding the fallen to rise. When they cannot, the butt of a rifle drives into their side, forcing them upright You watch as they stagger back into place, half bent, barely moving, yet somehow kept alive by fear of what would happen if they stayed down. You learn in that moment that stumbling is dangerous, that weakness is visible, and that visibility can kill. So you keep your steps steady, even when your knees shake, even when your head spins. The hours blur. The sun does not move fast enough to mark the passage of time, and so you measure it instead by the sensations in your body. At first your legs ache, a steady throb from the rhythm of walking on hard ground. Then your shoulders tighten from the tension of holding yourself upright. Your lips dry until they split. The taste of blood, faint but sharp. Thirst grows from a discomfort into a gnawing presence that consumes every thought. You see water in the shimmer of the road ahead, rippling like a river. But when you blink, it is gone, replaced by dust and stones. The heat does not lessen, and your need for relief becomes a silent scream trapped inside your ribs. The guards do not slow, and their pace becomes the only pace that exists. You wonder if they feel the sun in the same way, if their throats burn as yours does, but they walk with rifles balanced on their shoulders and expressions that never falter. Their indifference makes the suffering sharper. It tells you that what you endure is intentional, that the march itself is part of the re-education. The road is not merely a path between one place and another, but a weapon. It strips strength from your body and will from your mind before you have even reached your destination. Around you, neighbours shuffle with bowed heads, some weeping silently, some staring blankly at the road, as if by fixing their eyes forward, they can endure another step. Children cry, voices weak and hoarse, and parents hush them with trembling hands. One man tries to carry his mother on his back, her thin arms locked around his shoulders, but each mile drags him closer to collapse. When the guards notice, they order him to leave her, to set her down on the side of the road. His face breaks in anguish, but he obeys, lowering her gently into the dust. You see her lips move as she tries to bless him, though the sound is lost in the heat. Then the line moves on, and she's gone, swallowed by distance. The march teaches its own lessons. You learn to ration your strength, to shift your weight so that each step costs a little less, to breathe shallowly so that dust does not choke you as fully. You learn to keep your eyes lowered, not to meet the gaze of the guards, not to draw attention. You learn the silence that the others have already embraced, the silence that speaks of submission, but also of survival. Words are heavy now, heavier than the load your legs carry, and no one dares waste them. The only sounds permitted are the shuffle of feet, the coughs of the sick, and the constant orders from the guards. The world narrows to the sensations of the road. The ground is uneven, stones cutting into your soles, mud clinging to your ankles in patches where the earth has not yet dried. Insects swarm in the heat, biting at your skin until you bleed, and still you must walk. Sweat streams down your body, soaking your clothes until they cling like another weight. Every breath feels heavier than the last, as though the air itself resists being drawn into your lungs. You want to stop, to rest for even a moment, but the press of bodies behind you and the shouts of the guards leave no space for refusal. As the day drags on, the march becomes a blur of half-conscious movement. You stumble more often now, each time catching yourself before falling. Hunger rises to join thirst, a dull ache in your stomach that twists tighter with every step. You think of food without meaning to, images of bowls of rice, of water carried fresh from wells, of fruit cool and sweet on the tongue. The memories are vivid, cruelly so, as though your body is mocking itself with what it can no longer have. Around you, others must see the same visions, because their lips move in silent repetition of words that look like prayers or curses. When the sun begins to lower, shadows stretch across the road, but relief does not come. The heat lingers in the dust and the guards show no sign of halting. Fatigue becomes something heavier than pain, pressing into every limb until your body feels like it no longer belongs to you. You march because your legs move automatically, not because you will them to. Thought itself becomes distant, slipping away until only the next step exists. The journey erases everything else, your home, your past, even your name, leaving only the body moving through dust under the weight of command. The line grows ragged as night begins to press in. Some walk slower, dragging their feet, while others are pushed forward by fear alone. The guards grow harsher, their shouts sharper, their punishments more immediate. A man near you collapses and does not rise again. This time, no one lifts him, and no one speaks. The line simply flows around his body, leaving it in the road. The silence that follows is heavier than the sound of 100 voices would have been. You keep moving because to stop is to be left behind, and to be left behind is to vanish. Thirst claws at your throat until every swallow feels like glass. Your vision blurs at the edges, black creeping in, and you fight to keep it from overwhelming you. The sky darkens into deep blue, and the first stars flicker faintly above, but they bring no comfort. The journey stretches longer than a single day should allow, as though time itself has bent to prolong the suffering. Then at last, the shape of buildings appears on the horizon, dark silhouettes against the fading light. The camp waits, its outline sharp against the evening sky, and every step carries you closer to it. The shapes that had loomed on the horizon now sharpen as you draw near. What had been faint silhouettes under the fading light become stark lines of wood and wire. Barbed fences stretch around the perimeter, their twisted metal catching the last glint of the sun, like teeth. Watchtowers stand above them, tall and thin, each one holding a figure with a rifle slung across the chest. Eyes trained downward on the road that leads to the gate. The camp does not need words to tell you what it is. Its very shape speaks of control and confinement. Yet painted slogans still cover the walls. Large characters shout of revolution and purity, painted in thick red strokes. They repeat the same words you once heard blaring from loudspeakers on the road. That the past must be destroyed. That Cambodia begins anew. That this is year zero. The guards drive you forward through the entrance, their voices sharper now, more clipped, as though the presence of the camp itself adds to their authority. You step through the gate and feel the ground shift under your feet, not in texture, but in weight. The world you have known lies outside those fences, shrinking behind you, while inside something entirely different takes hold. The gate closes, the latch clanging like final punctuation. The sound carries across the yard, reverberating in your chest. You understand, even without words, that you're not leaving soon, if ever. The first task is the recording of names. You're lined up in rows that bend and sway under exhaustion. A small table stands near the entrance. Behind it, a guard with papers, and another with a ledger. One by one, you're pushed forward. Your name demanded, your birthplace, your family. The words catch in your throat, both from thirst and from fear. Speaking them aloud feels like surrendering pieces of yourself. Yet the guards wait with expectant stares, and hesitation is punished. You recite what is asked of you, and they scratch it into their papers with indifference. Whether they believe you or not does not matter. What matters is that you answer. After the questions, you're herded into another line. Guards stand on either side, rifles slung casually but ready. The line moves slowly, each step scraping against the ground as bodies shuffle forward. Ahead, a barracks door yawns open, its frame splintered from long use, its interior dark. The stench seeps out before you reach it. Sweat, damp wood, human waste, and something sour beneath it all. The smell catches at the back of your throat, making you gag, but there is no space to turn away. The line presses on, and soon you're swallowed into the building's gloom. Inside, the light falls away almost completely, leaving the room dim and heavy. Wooden beams crisscross the ceiling, their surfaces stained with age. The floor is not smooth but rough, scattered with mats woven from straw. They lie in uneven rows, pressed so closely together that they form more of a carpet than individual spaces. The mats are already occupied by thin figures, hunched and lying, their faces pale, their eyes dark and sunken. They watch as new bodies are pushed inside, but they do not speak. Their silence is heavier than words could ever be. The air is suffocating. It holds the heat of too many bodies packed into too small a space, and it holds the staleness of breath that has nowhere to go. Every inhale brings with it the tang of sweat and the acrid sharpness of unwashed skin. You hear the coughs before you see their sources, low rattling sounds that rise from the throats of the sick. A child whimpers softly, hushed quickly by a mother's hand. The shuffle of feet continues as guards push people into the room, filling every gap until no space remains between mats. The slogans are here too, painted in broad strokes across the barrack walls. The letters loom above you, bright against the wood, commanding obedience, loyalty, devotion. The words are inescapable, staring down even when you lower your gaze. Their presence makes the room feel smaller, as though the walls themselves are watching. You realize quickly that there is no corner of this camp where the message does not follow, no space free from its demand. The slogans shout even in silence, echoing louder than the voices of those around you. The guards stand at the doorway, their silhouettes cutting against the faint light outside. Their eyes scan the room constantly, shifting from a face to face, as though searching for the slightest wrong movement. The weight of their presence presses down harder than the crowded air. It tells you that there is no privacy here, no safety, not even within your own thoughts. You cannot whisper without risk. You cannot shift without drawing notice. Even lying down feels dangerous, as though to rest is to invite suspicion. You are shown to a mat at the far end of the barracks. It is thin and frayed, the straw poking through in sharp edges that scratch against your skin when you sit. The bodies around you press close, shoulders brushing, knees bumping. There is no room to stretch, no room to move without touching another. The heat of so many bodies gathers into one suffocating wave. You feel it seep into your skin, mingling sweat with the stranger pressed against you. In this closeness, even the act of breathing feels like intrusion, as if every inhale steals air from those beside you. Night deepens, though inside the barracks, the darkness had already seemed complete. The guards remain at the doorway, unmoving, their rifles glinting in what little light slips through. Their eyes never rest, and you sense that, even when their bodies stand still, their suspicion never does. You shift slightly on the mat, trying to find a position less painful, but the straw cuts and the hard ground beneath leaves no comfort. Around you, others settle into their own uneasy positions. Though settling is too generous a word. They collapse where they must, because there is nowhere else to go. You sit there in the thick heat, your body aching from the march, your mind raw from what you have seen, and you understand the finality of your arrival. This is where you will sleep, if sleep can be found. This is where you will wake, if morning comes. The slogans stare down from the walls, the guards' eyes pierce through the dark, and the press of bodies erases the last shred of privacy you once had. You lie back finally, the straw digging into your spine, and accept the truth. There is no comfort here, only the unyielding presence of watchful eyes. Morning comes not with the softness of dawn, but with the bark of orders shouted through the barracks door. The guards storm inside before the first light has properly filled the sky, their voices harsh, their boots striking the floorboards with sharp certainty. You rise from the mat not because you're rested, but because you're commanded to. Your body aches from the march, from the straw that dug into your back, from the press of too many limbs in too little space. yet there is no time to stretch, no time to breathe. The camp's rhythm does not wait for anyone. It begins the moment you open your eyes, and it will not end until the guards allow it. The first task of the day is not work but words. You are herded outside into the yard, where the sun has only just begun to lift the darkness. Dust hangs in the air, disturbed by so many shuffling feet. The prisoners gather in rows, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes heavy from sleeplessness. A wooden platform stands at the front, and on it a loudspeaker crackles to life, spilling slogans that have been painted on every wall and fence. The guards do not merely speak them, they demand that you shout them back, again and again, until the words burn your throat. The slogans are simple, yet their repetition makes them suffocating. They praise loyalty, condemn enemies, exalt the revolution, and declare that suffering is proof of devotion. At first your voice is weak, caught between thirst and fear, but the guards prowl along the lines, striking those who falter. You learn quickly that volume matters more than conviction. You force the words out until your throat feels scraped raw, until the sound of your own voice blurs into the hundreds around you. The slogans begin to lose meaning. They are no longer words but noise, a constant chant that fills the air like smoke, smothering thought. Hours pass in this cycle, slogans shouted, repeated, shouted again. When voices falter, the guards shout louder, demanding more. The sun rises higher, its heat pressing down on bare shoulders, but still the lessons continue. They are not lessons in knowledge, but in obedience. The slogans must be repeated not because they teach, but because they erase. They strip away the space where silence once lived, replacing it with sound that belongs to the camp. By the time the voices begin to crack, by the time the crowd's chant falters into hoarse gasps, the point has already been made. You do not own your voice. After the chanting, the platform is used again, this time for speeches. A figure in uniform reads from a paper, his tone flat, his words rehearsed. He speaks of enemies, of spies hidden among you, of the need for purity of thought. His language is sharp, filled with accusations, and though he does not point to anyone directly, you feel the weight of his gaze settle on all of you at once. The crowd stands in silence, listening, though listening is not truly required. Understanding is irrelevant. What matters is that you stand where you're told, that you nod when others nod, that you do not break the stillness. When the speeches end, another exercise begins. The guards instruct you to turn on one another. Names are called out, accusations spoken, confessions demanded. At first there is hesitation, a reluctance to speak against those who stood beside you on the march, those who once shared your village or your meals. But the guards watch closely, and the first person who refuses to accuse is struck hard across the face, their body dropping to the dirt. After that, the silence breaks. Voices rise, tentative at first, then sharper, each one naming someone else, each one casting suspicion outward in order to survive another hour. The accusations do not need to be true. Truth itself has lost meaning here. A neighbour might be called a spy, a farmer might be called a traitor, a child might be labelled an enemy of the state. The guards nod at each charge, writing down names, demanding further details. Each accusation feeds another, a chain reaction that spreads through the crowd until it seems everyone has been named by someone else. You watch as faces twist under the weight of betrayal, as friends point fingers at one another with trembling hands. You feel the urge to stay silent, to protect those you know, but the sharp eyes of the guards tell you what silence costs. When your turn comes, the fear in your chest is so heavy you can barely breathe. You're told to speak, to name someone, to expose their crimes. You glance at the faces around you, searching for someone who might be spared by your words, but no one is spared here. The guards demand a name, and your mouth moves because your survival depends on it. You speak, the words falling from your lips like stones, and you feel something inside you crack. The person you accuse looks at you with hollow eyes, and you see in their face the reflection of your own despair. But the accusations do not end with others. The guards turn the exercise inward. You are commanded to confess your own failings, to admit disloyalty, to admit thoughts that you never had. They demand that you reveal the hidden corruption of your mind, that you prove your commitment to the revolution by exposing the flaws within yourself. At first you stammer, searching for words, but hesitation is punished swiftly. A blow to the ribs doubles someone over. A kick sends another sprawling. You learn quickly that invention is safer than refusal. You confess to small crimes, then to larger ones, each lie feeding the appetite of those who demand it. The act of confession becomes its own ritual. You denounce yourself in front of the others, speaking of thoughts you never thought, of actions you never took. Each word feels like a piece of your identity being stripped away, leaving only the echo of obedience. The guards nod, satisfied not by truth, but by submission. Around you, others do the same, their voices breaking as they list false sins with desperate precision. The air grows heavy with the weight of self-betrayal, a chorus of people tearing themselves apart in order to remain standing. By the end, your throat burns, your voice reduced to a rasp. The dust hangs thick in the air, mingled with sweat and fear. The guards record the words as though they matter, but you understand now that meaning is irrelevant. What matters is the act of speaking, of obeying, of surrendering. Silence has become impossible. Even the refusal to accuse is taken as proof of guilt. Lies are demanded, and lies are the only way to survive. The shouting in the yard fades into something quieter, though not gentler. After the rituals of indoctrination, you're pulled away in smaller groups, sometimes alone, sometimes with only one or two others. The air changes when you cross the threshold into the narrow wooden rooms. The noise of the crowd disappears, replaced by stillness that presses as hard as the heat. Here the performance is no longer collective. It is directed inward, into the corners of your mind, where silence and memory are twisted into something else. The room where you're seated is plain, but its plainness carries menace. Bare wooden walls close tightly around you. A single bulb or oil lamp hangs above, its glow faint and unsteady, casting long shadows that twitch with every flicker. The air smells of ink and sweat and damp timber. A table sits between you and those who question you. Sometimes there is only one interrogator, sometimes two, their faces expressionless, their hands resting heavily on notebooks. Behind them, a guard leans against the wall, silent but alert, his rifle within easy reach. The arrangement itself tells you the truth. This is not a conversation, but a trap. The questions begin immediately. They are asked with no introduction, no acknowledgement of who you are, no sign that you were once anything other than a suspect. They come in sharp bursts. Where were you born? Who do you know? What did you say? Whom have you betrayed? You answer as best you can, your voice rough from hours of shouting slogans. But your words are not written down as you speak them. They are rephrased, twisted, reshaped as ink scratches across the paper. You realize quickly that your answers are irrelevant. What matters is the story being recorded, and that story is already decided. When you protest, the questions are asked again, slightly altered, as though they are searching for cracks in your memory. They circle back, demanding the same detail in 3 different forms, waiting for your exhaustion to break consistency. If you falter, it is called contradiction. If you remain steady, it is called rehearsed. Each path winds back to the same conclusion: guilt. You try to remember the details of your own life, The hours in the fields, the meals you shared, the faces of neighbours, but they blur under the pressure. After enough questioning, you find yourself unsure. Did you once say something careless? Did you once think something that could be called disloyal? The interrogators press closer, and your own memories begin to feel like evidence against you. The silences between questions become as heavy as the questions themselves. They lean across the table, watching, waiting, letting the pause stretch until your nerves unravel. The lamp hums faintly, its light pooling across their papers, and the sound of their pens scratching, when they finally move, is louder than it should be. Every detail of the room becomes sharp in your awareness. The sweat rolling down your temple, the creak of the stool when you shift your weight, the smell of your own fear rising off your skin. The smallest things grow unbearable because they remind you how trapped you are. You try to resist at first, you insist you are loyal, that you have nothing to confess. You repeat it calmly, then desperately, your voice rising before you force it down again. Each denial is met with the same look of patient disbelief, as though your refusal is precisely what they expected. They ask again and again, until the word loyal itself begins to sound false in your mouth. When you run out of ways to phrase your innocence, you fall silent. The silence earns a sharp blow across the face, the sudden crack of wood or palm against skin. Pain jolts you upright, and the questioning resumes as though nothing happened. You begin to invent. At first, the lies are small, almost harmless. You admit that once you doubted a slogan, once you wondered if the harvest would fail, once you envied a neighbour. They nod and write it down, satisfied for the moment. The relief is immediate, sharp as cool water, but it fades as quickly as it came. They lean closer, their pens poised again. Who heard you? Who else shared your thoughts? Who instructed you to doubt? You are drawn deeper into the web of questions, forced to supply names, details, conversations that never existed. Each lie spawns another demand, and the lies pile upon each other until you lose track of where they began. The interrogators guide you when you stumble. They offer suggestions, drop hints, remind you of things you never did. Sometimes they feed you an answer outright, and all you must do is repeat it. You do because resistance brings punishment, because agreement buys you a moment's reprieve. But with every repetition, your voice feels less your own. It is as though you're listening to someone else speak through your mouth, someone who has betrayed family, neighbours, even yourself. Time stretches. You lose all sense of how long you have been in the room. The lamp flickers on, but whether it is day or night beyond the walls, you cannot tell. Fatigue weighs on you until your head droops, but the interrogators do not relent. They call your name sharply, slam their fists on the table, jolt you awake. The questions pour on until you no longer know if what you say is truth or falsehood. You confess to things you never imagined, because the boundary between memory and invention has been ground down to nothing. When finally you're allowed to leave the room, you are not free. You are escorted back to the barracks, body trembling, throat raw, mind clouded. Others return at the same time. Their faces blank, their eyes sunken. You do not speak to one another because you already know the truth. Every one of you has confessed, and every one of you has lied. The lies differ in detail, but the act is the same. You gave them what they demanded, and still it will never be enough. Back on the straw mat, you lie awake long after the others have drifted into restless half-sleep. The questions repeat in your head, circling endlessly, their rhythm impossible to silence. You think of the words you spoke, the names you gave, the self you betrayed. You try to separate truth from falsehood, memory from invention, but the lines no longer hold. The interrogations have eroded them until they are indistinguishable. You realize with a hollow certainty that whether you told the truth or lied makes no difference here. Both paths lead to guilt. Both paths demand more. Morning comes before your body is ready. You have hardly slept, your mind still echoing with questions that had no answers. Your throat sore from the words that were forced out of you. Yet the guards' voices tear you from the straw mat, driving you into line with the others. The sun is not yet high, but already the air is heavy with heat, the kind that clings to skin and slows every breath. There is no chance to eat, no chance to gather strength. You are marched from the barracks, past the watchtowers and the painted slogans, out toward the fields that stretch wide beyond the camp. The rice paddies spread before you in neat rows of waterlogged earth. At first glance they seem calm, their green shoots rising above the surface of shallow water. But when your feet sink into the mud, calm dissolves into suffocation. The ground pulls at you with each step, sucking at your ankles, swallowing your toes. You are handed tools, rough, worn sticks, baskets, sickles with chipped edges, and ordered to work. The guards bark instructions, though the task itself needs no explanation. You bend into the water, your hands already wet, your back already straining, and the long day begins. The labour is endless. You're told to plant, to weed, to harvest, sometimes all in the same day, depending on the needs of the guards. The tasks shift without warning, and you must adapt instantly, your body obeying commands without pause. The mud clings to your skin, drying into a crust before being washed away again with each new step. Mosquitoes swarm thick over the paddies, biting until your arms and neck are mottled with swollen marks. The sun climbs higher, pressing down until sweat runs into your eyes, stinging, blinding. Still, you bend and lift, hour after hour. The rhythm of the work is punishing. Your hands plunge into the water, your fingers groping through mud for weeds to pull, or guiding seedlings into place, or tugging at stalks heavy with grain. Each movement is simple, but repetition makes it brutal. The sharp edges of the stalks slice tiny cuts across your palms, and soon they sting with salt from your sweat. Blisters rise quickly, then burst, leaving raw flesh that must still grip, still dig, still pull. You cannot pause to tend them. To slow is to draw the eye of a guard, and their eyes are always searching. Around you, others work with the same mechanical exhaustion. The paddies fill with the sounds of shuffling feet, the splash of water disturbed, the soft grunts of bodies pushed beyond their limits. No one speaks. The silence is not merely caution, it is necessity. Breath must be saved for the next movement, the next hour. Those who falter too long are struck. A guard wades into the field, the butt of his rifle driving into a shoulder, forcing the body upright again. If they collapse entirely, they are dragged to the edge of the paddy and left there until they can rise or until they are no longer breathing. The hunger grows sharper as the day wears on. Your stomach twists on itself, not with pangs anymore, but with a dull, constant ache. The thin gruel offered in the mornings is long gone, leaving nothing to sustain you but the stubborn drive to remain standing. Some bend lower than necessary, their mouths grazing the water, their teeth snapping at insects or blades of grass that float past. A guard notices, shouts, and strikes, but the desperate hunger does not stop. It returns again and again, gnawing at your belly until your vision blurs. The heat itself becomes another enemy. The sun glares off the water, turning the fields into mirrors of light that sting your eyes. Your clothes are soaked through, plastered against your body, heavy with sweat and mud. When a faint breeze passes, it offers no relief, only the illusion of it, vanishing before it can cool your skin. Dizziness creeps in, a spinning at the edges of your vision, and you fight to steady yourself, to keep your knees from buckling. The fear of falling is as strong as the exhaustion itself, because you have seen what happens to those who fall. The guards shout continually, their voices cracking across the fields like whips. They measure the rhythm of your work, pushing you faster, harder, as though the body could be stretched beyond its limits indefinitely. Their rifles gleam in the sun, reminders that refusal is not an option. Sometimes one of them strikes a prisoner simply to remind the rest of what can happen. The sound of the blow carries across the paddies, swallowed quickly by the silence of the workers, who do not dare react. The fear is constant, woven into every movement of your arms, every cautious step through the muck. As the hours stretch, the world narrows again to the sensations of labour. Your hands are shredded, your back screams with pain from bending low. Your feet sink deeper into the mud until they feel like they belong to the field itself. You stop thinking of time in terms of hours or minutes. You think only of the next stalk, the next weed, the next breath. The work erases thought in the same way. The slogans erased words, grinding down the self until all that remains is the movement of muscles. You become less a person and more an extension of the paddy, bound to its rhythm, trapped in its cycle. When at last the sun begins to dip, the light softening into evening, there is no release. The guards bark again, ordering the day's work to continue until every stalk in a section is finished. Darkness creeps across the fields, but you're not allowed to leave until the task is complete. Your body aches in ways that feel permanent, pain lodged deep in bone and tendon. Each step drags, each movement feels like lifting a stone. The cuts on your hands are open and bleeding freely now, the water in the paddy stained faintly with the thin red that seeps from your skin. You glance at the others, and you see the same hollow exhaustion in their faces, the same trembling of limbs that cannot quite hold steady. Finally, when the last order is shouted and the final row of stalks is finished, you are marched back toward the camp. The journey is shorter than the march that first brought you here, but it feels just as endless. The mud clings heavier now, the ground tilts beneath your steps, and your body feels moments from collapse. By the time you stumble into the barracks, darkness has settled fully, broken only by the weak flicker of lamps. You sink onto the mat, your hands raw, your body trembling with exhaustion. The straw scratches at your wounds, the heat lingers, the guard's eyes remain fixed, and as you close your eyes, you know with absolute certainty that nothing has ended. The work strips strength from your body, but it is the rations that hollow you. After days of labour in the paddies, after hours spent bending under the sun until your back feels broken, the food offered is little more than a gesture. The bowls handed out are shallow, each filled with gruel so thin it is more water than substance. Sometimes the gruel is replaced by a handful of rice, each grain counted out as though it were a treasure. You clutch the small portion in your hands, aware that it must sustain you through another day of toil, another night of restless silence. The first mouthful brings no satisfaction. The rice is dry and clumps together, catching in your throat, forcing you to swallow hard to push it down. The gruel, when it comes, carries a faint sourness, as though the water itself has begun to spoil. There is no taste beyond blandness, no strength within it. The food passes quickly from mouth to stomach and disappears into the emptiness waiting there. The ache of hunger does not fade. Instead it sharpens, made crueler by the reminder of what it means to eat without being nourished. Around you, others receive their rations with the same hollow looks. A child licks the inside of a bowl, desperate to find even a drop more of thin broth. An old man counts each grain in his palm before tipping them into his mouth, eyes glazed with disbelief at how little remains of what once would have been a meal. Mothers try to divide their portions between themselves and their children, though both end up with less than nothing. The act of eating becomes another form of punishment, reminding you of what has been taken and what will never be enough again. The hunger gnaws constantly. At first it is a pang that comes and goes, sharp but fleeting. Soon it becomes permanent, a dull twisting in your gut that accompanies you everywhere. The pain deepens at night, when the body is still but the stomach is loud, growling in the silence of the barracks. Sleep becomes harder, interrupted by the churning within you. Even when exhaustion drags you into half-consciousness, dreams of food fill your mind. Bowls of steaming rice, fruit heavy with sweetness, bread warm from an oven. You wake with your mouth watering, your hands empty, your belly hollow. The body begins to feed on itself. You feel it in the way your limbs weaken, in the way your vision blurs when you stand too quickly, in the way wounds from the paddies heal slowly, if at all. Your muscles shrink, your ribs press sharply against skin, your face hollows in the dim light. When you lift your arm, it feels heavier than before, not because it has grown, but because you have diminished. Even your breath feels thinner, as though the air cannot sustain you without fuel. Every movement costs more than the last, and still the work continues without pause. You learn to guard your ration fiercely, to hold your bowl close, to eat quickly before anyone else can try to take what little you have. In the crowded barracks, theft becomes another form of survival. A hand reaching out in the dark can mean the difference between life and death. Trust frays under hunger's pressure, and suspicion lingers even between those who once shared friendship or blood. Hunger does not allow generosity. It sharpens into instinct, narrowing thought until all that matters is the next mouthful. When rations are not enough, and they never are, you begin to search elsewhere. At the edge of the paddies, grass grows thick, blades long and coarse. You pluck them, chewing slowly, hoping to trick your body into believing it has received something more. The grass cuts at your tongue, its taste bitter, its fibres stubborn against your teeth. Still you chew, swallowing the green pulp with difficulty. The act brings no relief, only the faintest illusion of fullness that fades within minutes. Yet you return to it again and again, because the ache in your belly allows no other choice. Insects become another source. Dragonflies, beetles, crickets, whatever crawls or flies near the paddies or the barracks is snatched quickly by desperate hands. You crush them between your teeth, their shells snapping, their taste sharp with bitterness. Some gag at first, but the gagging fades after days of practice. Hunger does not allow revulsion. The crunch of wings and legs becomes familiar. The sourness of their bodies, another flavour among many that you force yourself to accept. You eat quickly and quietly, always in secret, because to be caught is to risk punishment, and because others would steal them from you if they knew. Even the trees become a target. Bark is stripped from trunks at the camp's edge, chewed until the fibres splinter between your teeth. It offers no nourishment, only the dull satisfaction of chewing, of swallowing something that occupies the stomach for a moment. Your gums bleed from the sharp edges, your teeth ache from grinding, yet still you return to it. Hunger is not only a need, it is a command that overrides all else. It whispers constantly, louder than the guards, louder than the slogans, louder than your own thoughts. It tells you to eat whatever can be found, no matter the cost. The guards watch all of this with indifference. They distribute rations with the precision of accountants, never more than what they have decided is sufficient, never less unless it is punishment. They do not interfere when you chew grass or strip bark, except when it amuses them to mock. To them, your hunger is not a problem, but a tool. A hungry body is easier to control, less likely to resist, too weak to rebel. Hunger is the quiet whip that keeps you bent to the fields, the invisible chain that holds you in place. You begin to forget the taste of real food. Memories of meals once shared blur at the edges, becoming dreamlike, uncertain. Did you ever eat until you were full? Did you ever taste sweetness, salt or spice? The recollection grows fainter with each passing day. The hunger consumes not only the body, but memory itself, replacing the past with the constant ache of the present. You are no longer certain what it means to be nourished, only what it means to ache without end. Eventually, sickness breaks out. It begins quietly, almost invisibly. A cough in the corner of the barracks, a figure doubled over on the path to the fields, a feverish flush on a neighbour's face. Soon it spreads, winding through the camp as if carried on the dust itself. Malaria, dysentery, infected wounds, none of them need to be named for you to recognise their presence. You see them in the way bodies bend, in the trembling of limbs, in the faint smell that rises from bedding where illness has taken root. By night, the barracks echo with coughing and wheezing, each breath rattling in the dark until silence comes from someone who no longer has the strength to continue. The paddies themselves feed the sickness. You wade daily into stagnant water alive with insects, each bite another chance for fever. The mud that clings to your ankles hides cuts that never close, wounds that fester under the press of sweat and dirt. The sun burns your skin until it peels, leaving raw patches vulnerable to infection. You feel the weakness seep into your body, as though the land itself is consuming you, pulling strength from your blood even as you toil to force food from the soil. Each morning you step into the fields, and each evening you return more diminished, more likely to carry something back with you, beyond the mud stuck to your legs. The barracks are no refuge. There is no distance, no protection. The mats are soaked not only with sweat, but with vomit, with diarrhea, with the fluids that sickness wrings from weakened bodies. The smell thickens until it coats the back of your throat. At night, the heat amplifies it, turning the air heavy, difficult to draw into your lungs. The sound of groaning rises, broken only by sudden silence when someone slips into unconsciousness or death. There is no medicine. None is offered, none is promised, none is expected. The guards look on with the same indifference they show to hunger. Illness is not an accident here, but another weapon. It weakens you, pares you down to something easier to control, and in that weakness, they see no problem to solve. Requests for help are ignored. A prisoner begging for treatment is silenced with the back of a hand or the butt of a rifle. The only cure is to endure, and if you cannot endure, you are left to collapse. Fever comes like fire, burning from within until your skin feels as though it glows. Sweat pours off you in waves, soaking your mat, dripping into your eyes until you can no longer see clearly. Chills follow, shaking your body so violently your teeth chatter in the dark. You clutch at your own arms, shivering, though the air remains hot and stifling. Your mind wanders in the haze of it, caught between half dreams and half delirium. You see faces that are not there, hear voices long silenced, drift into memories of home that dissolve when you try to hold them. Dysentery cuts more cruelly. The ache in your stomach sharpens into knives, twisting until you can no longer stand upright. You stumble into the corner of the barracks, or to the pit outside, your body expelling what little food it had clung to. The weakness that follows is absolute. Your knees buckle, your vision dims, and you return to the mat with nothing left inside you. Each trip steals another fragment of strength, until rising at all becomes impossible. The guards do not pause the labour for sickness. Those who can still walk are forced into the paddies. Those who cannot are left behind, their moans filling the air like a second chorus to the slogans shouted outside. The wounds deepen in silence. A cut across the palm from a stalk, a scrape along the leg from a stone hidden in the mud. Small things that once would have healed with time. Now they swell, redden, ooze with pus that stains the water around you. The infection crawls up the skin, streaking red lines toward the heart. Pain sharpens into throbbing, then into a constant pressure that makes every movement unbearable. Still you must bend, still you must pull, Still you must labour. The guards do not see infection. They see only bodies that must work until they fall. You watch others collapse under the combined weight of hunger and sickness. One man staggers in the paddy, his legs trembling before they give way entirely. He sinks into the water, his face disappearing beneath the surface until another prisoner drags him up. Not out of kindness, but out of fear that the guards will punish everyone for his failure. The man coughs, water and blood spilling from his mouth, but he is pushed back into place, forced to continue until his body refuses again. This time, no one moves to help. He lies in the mud, unmoving, while the work continues around him. The barracks become a place of shadows. Bodies shrink into themselves, bones pressing sharply under skin, eyes sunken deep into hollow sockets. Coughs tear through throats until they are little more than whispers. Fevered skin glistens in the dim light, and the stench of sickness lingers, even when you turn away. You lie on your mat, listening to the rasp of breath that may stop at any moment. Sometimes you wake to find a space beside you empty, the mat rolled tightly, the body removed in the night. No explanation is given. The absence itself becomes the answer. Sickness does not come as a single blow, but as erosion. It wears you down hour by hour, stripping strength from your body until standing becomes difficult, until lifting your arm feels impossible, until your own breath feels heavy. It does not kill quickly. It drags, prolonging suffering, keeping you alive long enough to weaken you further. You begin to fear not only death, but the waiting that precedes it, the endless days of fever and pain that lead into silence. The body becomes an enemy, a place where infection takes root, where weakness grows unchecked, where survival feels like defeat. The guards show no pity. They strike the sick just as they strike the healthy, pushing them into the fields until collapse makes it impossible. Their eyes pass over trembling bodies without pause, as though illness itself is invisible. If anything, sickness serves their purpose. It removes the strongest, it reduces the rest to shadows. It ensures obedience through exhaustion. To them, your weakness is proof of control. To you, it is proof that your body is no longer your own. By day's end, the fields are littered with those who cannot rise. They slump in the mud, their faces pale, their breaths shallow. Some are dragged to the side, others are left where they fall, the water around them rippling with the faintest movements. The stronger prisoners avert their eyes, focusing only on the stalks in their hands, on the mud at their feet. To notice is to risk being noticed. To help is to invite punishment. So you look away, though the image remains burned into your mind. Night does not bring relief. The barracks fill with the sounds of illness, coughing, groaning, the wet rattle of lungs filling with fluid. The air grows thick, heavy with heat and the stench of infection. You close your eyes, but rest does not come. The moans of the dying seep into your ears, reminding you that sickness is everywhere, waiting for its turn. When morning arrives, some do not rise. Their mats remain occupied by bodies too weak to move, or emptied entirely by removal before the rest awake. The cycle continues. Each dawn you're marched back to the fields. Your own body weaker than the day before. Your own breath shorter, your own wounds slower to heal. Around you, more and more stumble, more and more vanish. Even survival brings risk. A wrong glance, a stumble, a whispered word. All are reasons enough to invite blows. The sickness weakens your body. The hunger hollows you out, but the punishments remind you that suffering itself is not accidental. It is enforced. The guards carry their rifles with casual ease, but it is often the smaller weapons, sticks, belts, the backs of their hands, that are most dangerous. A gesture too slow, or a posture too slouched, can bring a strike across the shoulders, sharp and sudden, leaving you gasping before you understand what rule you have broken. Punishment in the camp is not predictable. That is part of its power. Some mornings a man collapses in the field and is left untouched, his body ignored as though it does not exist. Another morning, someone falters in the same way and is dragged upright by the hair, beaten until their skin splits. A woman caught humming under her breath during work is struck so hard she does not rise again. A boy who coughs too loudly during the night is dragged outside, the sound of his cries echoing back into the barracks as a warning to everyone else. You cannot learn the rules because the rules change with every hour, shaped only by the mood of those who watch you. The blows come fast and without explanation. A guard's hand cuts across your face before you know why. A rifle butt slams into your ribs, sending you sprawling into the mud. The sting of bamboo strikes across your back, leaving welts that burn under sweat. You cry out once, then learn quickly to swallow the sound, because reaction itself is punished. Pain must be endured in silence, teeth clenched, body forced upright. The more you show, the worse it becomes. You train yourself to stillness, though the fear inside you trembles endlessly. Humiliation often comes with the beatings. Those singled out are forced to kneel in the mud for hours, their bodies baking under the sun, flies gathering around them. Others are ordered to slap each other, to prove loyalty by striking neighbours, friends, even family. The guards watch with satisfaction as bonds fracture under the weight of command. You raise your hand against another prisoner, not because you want to, but because the alternative is to be struck harder yourself. Each act leaves a scar inside you, deeper than the ones carved into your skin. Sometimes the punishments take stranger forms. You are ordered to hold a sack of stones above your head until your arms shake and fail. You are forced to squat with hands clasped behind your neck, your legs burning until they give way. You're made to stand in line under the watch of the guards, while others are beaten in front of you, compelled to witness as reminders of what could happen. The sight of blood soaking into the dust becomes routine, yet never less terrifying. Every display is meant to teach the same lesson. You are powerless, and your body belongs to them. Fear saturates the barracks. At night, no one dares speak above a whisper, and even whispers are dangerous. The memory of punishment hangs in the air, thick as smoke. You lie on your mat, every sound sharpened by dread. The creak of the door, the footsteps of a guard passing by, the sudden cry of someone dragged from the darkness. The silence of others is heavy, each person frozen in their own caution, each one knowing that any sound could draw attention. You fall asleep not into rest but into vigilance, your dreams filled with the expectation of blows. In the fields, punishment is constant, lurking behind every movement. The guards pace along the edges of the paddies, their eyes scanning ceaselessly. A stumble in the mud brings a lash across the back. A head lifted too high earns a strike to the shoulders. A body that moves too slowly is shoved forward, ribs bruised by rifle butts. You learn to bend lower than necessary, to move faster than your body allows, because overwork is less dangerous than the sting of a beating. Still the blows come, unpredictable, reminders that even obedience does not protect you fully. You witness punishments that linger beyond the moment of pain. A man is ordered to dig a trench alone under the sun until he collapses, his skin blistering, his breath shallow. A woman is forced to carry a sack heavier than her body for hours, stumbling until her knees give way. The guards laugh as they watch, their amusement sharper than cruelty, because it reveals how suffering has become entertainment. You understand in those moments that punishment is not only about discipline, but about control, about shaping fear so thoroughly that it rules even when the guards are silent. The anticipation becomes worse than the act itself. Every step, every breath, every glance is measured against the possibility of pain. You move with a carefulness that feels unnatural, rehearsed, like an animal trained into submission. Your mind fragments under the strain of constant vigilance, thoughts dissolving into calculations of risk. Should you shift your weight now, or wait until the guard looks away? Should you cough into your sleeve, or hold it in until your chest aches? Each choice feels like a matter of survival, though survival is never guaranteed. In time, the punishments shape you more effectively than hunger or sickness. You learn to move not as yourself, but as a shadow, keeping your head bowed, your body bent, your breath shallow. You hide every sign of pain, every flicker of thought, every trace of humanity that might draw attention. Obedience becomes a mask you wear so tightly it begins to feel like your only face. Yet beneath it, fear clings, woven into every nerve, every heartbeat. When labour and shouting finally cease, night brings a silence that is not peaceful, but heavy, pressing down like another weight upon your chest. The paddies vanish into darkness. The guards call you back to the barracks, and the endless rhythm of toil halts. But the stillness that follows is filled with its own torment. The camp grows quiet only on the surface. Beneath it, the air trembles with suppressed sound. Coughs breaking into the hush, muffled sobs carried from one corner to another, and the sharp, measured footsteps of guards pacing outside. Inside the barracks, bodies collapse onto mats, limbs folding in unnatural positions for lack of space. The smell rises immediately, a mixture of sweat, mud, and sickness that thickens in the confined heat. The mats creak under shifting weight, straw scratching against raw skin. A child whimpers softly until silenced by a parent's trembling hand. An old man groans as he lowers himself. His body so thin the sound of his bones is audible. All of it builds into a chorus of weakness that fills the room. Yet even in such exhaustion, no one dares raise their voice above a whisper. The silence is demanded as much as the labour is. The darkness magnifies every small sound. A cough seems louder than it should be, echoing through the barracks like a shout. Each time it breaks out, you tense, waiting to see if the guards will burst through the doorway, furious at the disturbance. A shift of straw, a sneeze, the faintest cry from a fevered body. All of them stretch into long moments of fear. You realise quickly that the night is not a reprieve from punishment, but another stage of it. Even in stillness, you remain exposed, vulnerable, held in place by the constant awareness that you're being watched. The footsteps of the guards outside are steady, relentless. They circle the barracks with a rhythm that becomes a clock of its own, marking time in the scrape of boots across dirt. Every few minutes, one of them pauses and the silence grows sharper until the steps begin again. You lie there, straining to interpret the pace, wondering if the pause means they are listening or if they have stopped to drag someone out into the night. Sometimes the door does creak open, light from a lamp spilling briefly across the mats, as a guard points, gestures, pulls someone to their feet. The body is led away without explanation, their silhouette shrinking into the dark. The barracks remain silent, every face turned toward the ground, no one daring to speak the questions that weigh on every mind. The cries begin some nights after those disappearances. They are faint at first, muffled by distance, but they carry on the air, rising from beyond the fences. A voice wails once, sharp with terror, then cuts into a soundless gap, only to begin again. Sometimes it is a single cry, other times a series of them, echoing into the night like a broken song. You lie on your mat, your body stiff with fear, unable to close your ears to the sound. Each cry tears through the silence, a reminder that the night does not merely hide suffering, it multiplies it. Within the barracks, the cries change shape. Some are muted sobs, pressed into hands or into the straw to muffle them. Others are whispered prayers, lips moving quickly, quietly, to gods who may or may not be listening. Fevered bodies moan in half delirium, calling out names of the dead, names of the living, names that have already been forgotten by everyone else. The air vibrates with these small sounds, never enough to break the silence completely, always enough to remind you that silence is not emptiness, but suppression. You lie on your mat, your body aching, your stomach twisting with hunger, your head heavy with exhaustion, and yet sleep does not come easily. Each sound jolts you awake. Each shift of weight beside you threatens to expose you. The heat of bodies pressed close together suffocates. The stench of sickness clogs your throat. You close your eyes only to open them again when another cough, another cry, another footstep makes you believe the guards are about to enter. Sleep becomes a fragile thing, shattered over and over until you no longer attempt to hold it. The night stretches longer than the day, without the rhythm of labour to divide time, without the distraction of shouted slogans. Minutes drag into hours that feel unending. You try to count the footsteps of the guards, to measure the distance of the cries, to estimate when the first light might arrive, but the darkness erases your attempts. Time itself becomes uncertain, replaced by a cycle of waiting. Waiting for a blow, waiting for another cry, waiting for silence so deep it means something has ended. You notice how fear shapes the bodies around you. People sleep rigidly, their faces turned toward the ground, their limbs tucked in tight to avoid brushing against others. Some lie with their eyes open, staring into the dark, unwilling to surrender consciousness, even for a moment. Others twitch in restless half-dreams, their mouths moving silently, as though still chanting slogans or confessing crimes. The atmosphere is one of paralysis. Everyone too afraid to move, too afraid to speak, too afraid to exist fully. Night reduces you all to shadows, pressed flat by dread. Sometimes the guards do not take anyone. The night passes without the door opening, without cries rising from the distance. Yet even then the silence does not ease. The threat is enough, more potent than action itself. You lie there with your heart pounding, your breath shallow, knowing that at any moment the door could creak, the light could flood in, and a hand could fall on your shoulder. It is this uncertainty that makes the silence unbearable, the knowledge that what has not yet happened could happen at any time. The cries that do come are never spoken of in the morning. Those who return, if any return at all, do so silently, their faces drained of expression. Those who vanish are not mentioned, their mats rolled away as though they had never been there. The silence of the night bleeds into the day, and no one dares to disturb it. Yet the memory of the cries lingers, lodged in your ears, replaying each time the barracks falls quiet again. You realise, lying there, that night is not rest but another battlefield. The labour of the day grinds your body, but the silence of the night gnaws at your mind. It teaches you that safety does not exist, that darkness does not protect, that even sleep is dangerous. You lie rigid, every muscle tense, straining to hear what cannot be ignored. And when the cries rise from beyond the fence, you cannot stop listening, cannot close your ears, cannot turn away. People vanish. It begins almost without notice, a space left empty on a mat in the morning, a face no longer present in the line for rations, a voice that once coughed through the night falling silent. At first you think perhaps the missing have been taken to another part of the camp, moved for work or questioning, but the longer you remain, the clearer it becomes. Those who disappear are not coming back. Some are marched away under guard, their silhouettes shrinking into the dark until the gate swallows them. Others are simply gone, their absence discovered only when someone glances at the place where they should have been. The vanishings follow no pattern you can understand. The sick are taken, but so are the strong. A man who shouted slogans louder than anyone else, who seemed almost eager to obey, is gone the next morning. A mother with a child vanishes one night, though no one heard the door open. Sometimes groups are led away, their footsteps echoing together in the stillness. And sometimes it is only one, their departure so quiet that you wonder if you imagined it. The randomness itself is the message, No amount of obedience protects you. No level of silence spares you. The possibility of vanishing hovers over every body, every breath. The barracks become maps of absence. Mats that once held 2 or 3 are rolled up, the straw shaken free of dust, the space closed as if it were never occupied. No explanation is given. No names are spoken. The guards do not acknowledge who has gone, and the prisoners do not dare ask. It is as though the vanished have been erased not only from the camp, but from memory itself. To speak their names is to invite suspicion, to draw attention that no one can afford. So the mats remain empty, and the silence fills the gaps where voices once lived. You remember the first time someone you knew was taken. A man who had walked beside you in the fields, his body stooped but determined, his voice hoarse from chanting slogans, was pulled from the line one evening. The guard called his name sharply, gestured with the rifle, and the man obeyed. He did not protest, did not even glance back. He walked out through the gate, his shoulders bent in the familiar posture of submission, and he never returned. His mat was rolled before dawn, the straw tucked away, the space filled by another body within days. You try to remember his face, but it blurs quickly, replaced by the constant presence of those still around you. His absence is felt only in silence. Some nights, the disappearances are not silent. You lie awake on your mat, rigid as always, and you hear the door creak open. Light floods briefly into the barracks, the guard's shadow stretching across the room. A hand points, a body is seized, and the prisoner stumbles into the dark. Then come the cries, distant but unmistakable, drifting back from beyond the fence. They rise, falter, rise again, before fading completely. The next morning the mat is empty. No one looks at it, no one speaks of it, no one acknowledges what you all know to be true. The cries remain in your memory, but the person who made them has already been erased. The vanishing spread paranoia through the camp more effectively than any beating. You wonder constantly if your turn is next, if the guard's eyes will settle on you in the night. Every action feels weighted with risk. The pace of your work, the volume of your voice, the expression on your face. Yet you see others vanish who seemed beyond reproach, and you understand that there is no safety, only chance. The randomness gnaws at you more than hunger or sickness, because it means there is no strategy, no way to ensure survival. You live from hour to hour, uncertain whether you will see another dawn. Fear sharpens silence into stone. In the mornings, no one asks who has gone. In the evenings, no one wonders aloud what fate has claimed them. Even a glance toward an empty mat feels dangerous, as though noticing absence might draw the guard's attention. You keep your eyes forward, your head down, your mouth closed. The silence becomes so complete that it feels as though the vanished were never there at all. The faces blur in your memory, names slip from your mind, and what remains is only the hollow where they once existed. Occasionally, rumours circulate in whispers, too faint to be heard by guards. Some say the vanished are sent to deeper camps, to prisons where confessions are carved out more brutally. Others claim they are taken to the fields beyond the fences, where shallow pits wait in the earth. A few whisper that the missing are executed outright, their bodies discarded where no one will see. The stories contradict each other, and none are spoken loudly enough to be confirmed. In truth, the fate of the disappeared is unknown, and perhaps that uncertainty is worse than certainty. At least certainty would give shape to fear. Uncertainty allows it to expand endlessly. You begin to notice how absence itself becomes a pattern. The cough you listen to for weeks falls silent, and the silence feels louder than the cough ever did. The familiar curve of a shoulder ahead of you in the line no longer breaks the monotony, and the space it leaves behind seems larger than the body ever was. In the barracks, the missing are replaced, but you can still trace the ghost of where they lay, the impression pressed into the straw, the faint smell left on the mat. Each absence is a shadow, one that lengthens as more and more vanish. In time, you stop trying to remember the faces. Memory itself feels dangerous, a burden that draws you toward despair. You focus instead on what remains, the body beside you, the stalk in your hands, the mud at your feet. To dwell on those who are gone is to invite collapse, and collapse is a luxury you cannot afford. The camp demands silence not only from your lips, but from your thoughts. Forgetting becomes another form of survival. You learn to let go of names, of voices, of gestures once familiar. They slip away, absorbed into the silence that grows heavier each night. When the guards drag someone out, you fix your eyes on the ground. When a mat is rolled, you turn your head the other way. When cries rise in the distance, you force your body to remain still, though every nerve screams to move. To notice is to endanger yourself. To care is to become vulnerable. So you practice indifference until it becomes real, until the vanishings stir nothing in you but the quiet relief that it was not you this time. Relief lasts only a moment, fading quickly into dread for the night to come. And yet deep inside, you know the silence is a lie. You know that the vanished lived, that they spoke and worked and suffered as you do. You know that their absence means something more than emptiness. But the camp leaves no room for remembrance. The guards roll the mats, the prisoners avert their eyes, and the routine continues as though nothing has changed. Days blur together, indistinguishable from one another. The line between morning and night dissolves, leaving only the cycle of labour, hunger, sickness, punishment, and silence. Your body thins until you see bone pressing sharply beneath skin, ribs protruding like bars, wrists narrowing until they feel fragile enough to snap. Around you, others diminish in the same way. Faces that once held features soften into hollow planes, cheeks caving, eyes sinking into dark shadows. Words fade from the barracks, replaced by the sound of breath drawn with effort, the rustle of straw as bodies shift without purpose. People sit in the mud at the edge of the fields, their eyes unfocused, their mouths unmoving, as though thought itself has become too heavy to carry. The loss of speech is gradual, but undeniable. At first, voices weaken into whispers, a single phrase shared between workers, a muttered prayer in the barracks. Then the whispers vanish altogether, leaving silence so complete that the absence of sound feels like pressure. The slogans are still shouted when demanded, but even they emerge cracked and broken, rasped through throats too dry to sustain them. The words no longer resemble language. They are only noise, expelled because refusal would bring blows. Beyond that, no one speaks. The camp becomes a place without conversation, without questions, without names. You forget the sound of your own voice except when it is forced from you. The fields absorb what remains of your strength. You stumble through the mud, bending, lifting, pulling. Not because you believe the work matters, but because movement is the only thing left between you and punishment. The tasks blur into one another until you can no longer tell if you're planting or harvesting, if the day is new or the same one repeated. Your body moves on memory alone, muscles twitching from habit rather than will. The guards shout, their voices as sharp as ever, but even their commands feel distant, as though they are meant for someone else. You obey automatically, not from fear, not from loyalty, but from emptiness. Hunger deepens into something quieter than pain. The gnawing in your stomach remains, but it no longer drives you to chew grass or bark. You lack the energy to search for scraps. The ache becomes background, a constant hum woven into your bones. You watch others collapse, their bodies too light to resist gravity, their knees folding as they sink into the mud. No one helps them. No one can. They sit where they fall, motionless, their eyes open but blank. Sometimes they rise again, after hours of stillness, staggering to their feet, only to resume the motions of labour. Other times, they remain until the guards drag them away, their bodies leaving faint impressions in the wet earth. Sickness gnaws at you too, but even fever feels dulled by exhaustion. You sweat without strength, shiver without resistance, cough without the energy to draw breath deeply. The body endures not by healing, but by collapsing into stillness, conserving what little remains. You stop hoping for recovery. You expect only continuation, another day of weakness carried into another night. The boundary between life and death blurs, not because you're close to dying, but because you no longer know how to measure the difference. Both feel like forms of waiting. The punishments continue, though even they lose sharpness in your perception. A blow to the shoulder lands, and you stagger, but the pain does not lodge in memory. A rifle butt presses into your ribs, but the ache is swallowed by the greater numbness already inside you. You do not flinch as quickly as before, not because you're braver, but because reaction itself takes energy you no longer possess. The guards' voices wash over you without meaning, their orders absorbed by your body without thought. You bend, you lift, you kneel, you rise, all without awareness. You are less a prisoner now than a machine that has learned only one function: to endure. The disappearances continue, but they barely register. When a mat is rolled in the morning, when a cough vanishes from the night, when a face no longer appears in the line, you feel only the faintest flicker of recognition. The silence that follows feels no different from the silence already pressing in on you. Memory itself begins to erode. Names slip away first, then features, then even the knowledge that you once cared for those who are gone. You do not force yourself to forget. Forgetting happens naturally, as though the mind protects itself by shedding what it can no longer bear. The camp becomes a place of statues rather than people. Workers move stiffly, their eyes blank, their mouths closed. In the barracks, bodies fold into positions that resemble rest but are only exhaustion. No one speaks, no one laughs, no one cries. Even tears fade because the body cannot spare water for grief. You lie among them, your limbs heavy, your breath shallow, and you understand that collapse is not an event but a state. It is the way life continues here, reduced, muted, stripped of motion and thought until only the shell of existence remains. You find yourself sitting for long stretches in the mud, your hands resting loosely in your lap, your gaze fixed on nothing. The guards shout, but their words pass by like distant thunder. You rise when they strike you. You move when they demand it, but left alone you remain still, content to let the mud seep into your skin, to let the sun burn across your shoulders, to let insects crawl without brushing them away. Action feels unnecessary, as though the body has accepted that stillness is all it can offer. Nights stretch endlessly, but they no longer hold terror. The cries that once pierced the darkness fade from memory. Or perhaps you simply no longer hear them. You lie on your mat, too weak to turn, too tired to listen, too hollow to fear. The silence no longer feels heavy. It feels empty, as though the camp itself has drained of sound. You close your eyes and drift not into sleep, but into a half state where thought dissolves, where even dread feels too large to sustain. You notice changes in yourself as much as in others. Your voice, when forced into slogans, emerges cracked, barely audible, as though your throat has forgotten how to form sound. Your body trembles constantly, your hands shaking even when they rest. Cuts on your skin fester without pain, your nerves too dull to protest. You begin to forget how long you have been here, how many days have passed, how many remain. Time itself collapses into repetition, each moment indistinguishable from the last. What remains is endurance stripped bare. You do not hope for food, for healing, for release. You do not dream of escape or return. You focus only on the next breath, the next step, the next demand obeyed. Your will no longer stretches beyond the immediate. It does not reach into tomorrow. It clings only to the smallest fragments of survival, because anything more would be unbearable. For many, the end is execution, taken away under the pretense of further questioning. The guards call names at random, though often no names are spoken at all. A finger points, a body is lifted from the line, and the rest of you know what it means. There is no return from that path. Those led away do not come back to the barracks. Do not return to the fields. Do not leave impressions in the mats for others to occupy. Their absence is complete, sealed, and final. Everyone knows it, yet no one dares to say the word. The ritual is always the same. A guard gestures, you rise, and you follow. Resistance is unnecessary, even impossible. After hunger, sickness, punishment, and silence, the body no longer holds rebellion. It obeys without thought. Those who falter are shoved upright. Those who collapse are dragged until they can stumble forward on their own. The march is short, through the gates and into the night, past the fences and watchtowers that once seemed distant but now loom close. The silence that follows your footsteps is unbearable, each sound magnified in the stillness. The scrape of mud under your sandals, the shuffle of chains, the rasp of shallow breath. You are told it is another questioning, that more confessions are needed. The words are spoken flatly, without conviction, and you do not believe them. You have already confessed everything imaginable. You invented crimes until truth and lies dissolved. There is nothing left to give, and still they demand more. You walk on knowing that this demand will not end in words but in silence. It is not another interrogation that waits for you beyond the fields. It is the conclusion that has lingered in every disappearance, in every cry carried through the night. The path leads into the trees where the ground is softer, the earth disturbed in uneven patches. You do not need light to understand what lies here. The smell clings to the air, faint but unmistakable, a mix of soil and something older, something final. The guards carry tools as well as weapons. Their shovels lean against the trunks, their hands ready for both labour and killing. You stumble once on the uneven ground, and a hand strikes your shoulder to keep you moving. You rise again, because even now your body knows only obedience. At the edge of a shallow pit, you're ordered to kneel. The earth is damp beneath your knees, clinging to your skin, seeping into the fabric that barely covers you. The silence presses harder here than it ever did in the barracks. The trees hold it close, muffling even the distant sounds of the camp. Only the guards move, their boots scuffing the soil, their rifles shifting into place. One of them repeats the lie again. Another questioning, another confession, but his voice is bored, mechanical. The truth stands all around you, carved into the earth at your knees. In that moment, you think of what has already been taken. Your body, once whole, now reduced to bone and weakness. Your voice, once your own, now rasping with lies you were forced to speak. Your memory, once filled with names and faces, now blurred by silence and erasure. You have been hollowed until nothing remains but breath, and now even that will be removed. You do not cry out, you do not beg. There is no one left to hear, and no mercy left to grant. You bow your head because that is what you have been trained to do, and the gesture feels final. The blow comes swift, mechanical, practiced, a strike to the back of the skull. The world jolts white, then black, sound collapsing into nothing. There is no time for thought, no chance for protest. Death arrives not as a climax, but as another command obeyed. Another step in the rhythm the camp has set since the moment you arrived. You fall forward into the pit, your body colliding with earth that shifts beneath you. The soil carries the weight of others already here, bodies piled and pressed into silence. You join them, indistinguishable. One more life folded into erasure. The regime that was responsible for these atrocities fell in 1979, not because of mercy, but because war shifted the balance of power. Vietnam invaded Cambodia, driving the Khmer Rouge from Phnom Penh. The camps emptied, but not into freedom. Survivors stumbled from one uncertainty into another: famine, civil war, exile. The country itself lay hollowed, its fields mined, its villages emptied, its families broken beyond recognition. The silence of the camps did not end with their closure. It lingered in the shattered bodies, in the unmarked graves, in the memories too painful to speak aloud. The world was slow to understand what had happened. Reports trickled out, carried by refugees who spoke of starvation, of execution, of forced labour and indoctrination. At first, disbelief greeted them. How could such suffering have unfolded, largely unseen, in a world that had promised never again after earlier horrors? But as evidence mounted, the testimony of survivors, the discovery of killing fields, the bones rising from shallow soil, disbelief gave way to acknowledgement, though too late for those already gone. Justice was delayed for decades. Many senior Khmer Rouge leaders remained at large or only marginally restrained long after 1979. Some defected, others held influence among guerrilla forces or negotiated amnesties. Only in the early 2000s did international tribunals begin to prosecute a few of those responsible. By then, many perpetrators had died of old age, untouched by courts. A handful were convicted of crimes against humanity, their names recorded in judgment, but their punishment did little to balance the weight of millions erased. The law could not restore what was taken, nor could it speak for the voices that had been silenced. Cambodia continues to carry the scars. Fields remain littered with landmines that still maim and kill. Generations grow up in the shadow of absence, their family trees cut by a single, brutal span of years. Survivors live with memories etched into their bones, stories of hunger and labour and disappearance that cannot be unwound. Museums and memorials preserve fragments, walls of skulls, photographs of prisoners, preserved barracks and tools, but these can only gesture toward what was endured, the lived reality of the camps. The slow erosion of self through fear and hunger remains beyond full capture. Today, Cambodia is rebuilding. Life continues in its villages and cities. Children attend school, families plant rice, music plays once again in streets where silence reigned. Yet the past is not gone. It breathes in the testimonies of those who survived, in the memorial sites that mark killing fields, in the collective memory of a nation that was nearly destroyed. To remember is to resist erasure, to keep alive what the regime tried so thoroughly to obliterate. The story of the re-education camps is not only Cambodia's history, but the world's. It is a reminder of how fragile life becomes when ideology is placed above humanity, when fear becomes a tool of control, when silence is enforced at the cost of millions of voices. It is a reminder that the word re-education hid mass suffering, and that only by remembering can we ensure such language never hides such horrors again. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with another forgotten corner of history you'd like explored next. If you'd like early access to more of these quiet descents into forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.